Welcome everybody to NBC's college football Q&A and betting preview. It's bowl season, ladies and gentlemen, and you got the king of college football here with me, Eric Froton, myself, Vaughn, Dalzell. We're super excited to break down all these games. As you guys know, one of them begins right now, and it could be a snoozer. If you guys check out our website, we all picked the under in that game, so it could be bad news for us, but we like that at 44.5, at 41, and now down to 38.5 and 39. Eric, yesterday is quite a day for you, man. What are you looking at for the Louisville game, and how'd you do last night?
Well, yeah, since Louisville's about to kick off, I will say that it started out, as you mentioned, at 44.5. That over-under is down to 38.5, 39 in some places. And that's kind of a problem because yesterday we saw some pretty inclement weather there in Boston, my hometown, for the Fenway Bowl. But that seems to have straightened out. I've seen a couple of pictures from the actual game, and I'm looking at it right now live. It looks just fine out there. 45 degrees, no real precipitation, which is really the issue that we're looking at coming in here. I think that, I don't feel comfortable taking the under, even with the way that these two rosters are changing over, with Scott Satterfield leaving and Luke Fickell, Scott Satterfield going over to Cincinnati. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but I don't feel comfortable now that the threshold has been crossed of 40 points on that over-under. So I'm staying away from the under here. And I had been on Evan Prater's under 145.5 passing yards. That's since come down to 135.5 and kind of ticked back up to even 138. That's seeming pretty low, despite the fact all 6 of his starting 2 deep wide receivers are out. That being said, I am still backing the under there on Evan Prater if you can get him at 145.5. First 2 games, we didn't see him come anywhere near that range. And again, surprisingly, Louisville has a stout secondary, top 25 in terms of their pass defense.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game in a lot of ways if you like ugly football. But I'm here in Hartford, Connecticut, which is about 90 minutes from Boston. Yesterday, very, very, very ugly day. Rained all day. Didn't want to walk outside. Didn't even want to go to the movie theater, and I wanted to go see Avatar. But today, clear, sunny. It's nice. So, yeah, definitely lean the over now. We actually see reverse line movement where Louisville is now 2.5-point favorite as they kick off. So best of luck with whatever you guys do in that game. Eric, you did a great job yesterday getting that middle opportunity there after the nation's leading rusher was out. And a couple of things definitely worth noting that some of the most bet games today, we have a game that is involved in that. Fresno State and Florida, 2 of the 5 most bet ticket handle teams. And then when you look at most bet teams by handle, Fresno State and SMU on there. Anything stick out to you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not hard to figure out why you have Oregon State and Florida. That's one of the more high-profile games we're going to have for today, along with Fresno State and Washington State. So it makes sense that those games would be a little bit more played than you're going to see from, Rice and Southern Miss. So, yeah, that stands to reason.
Yeah, I think you see SMU getting the big favorite tag. We're going to talk about that one in a little bit here, just because of all the movement we saw from Jaron Hall being out. Essentially, Jaron Hall is going to be one of my plays today if he was in. I wanted that rushing touchdown prop, Eric. 3 straight games with a rushing touchdown after not having any all season before that. But yeah, I guess we won't be able to do that one here. But we do have some special guests, 2 of them in particular today that we're going to bring on and talk about a couple games here. So we're going to do the first one. We're going to bring in our man, Zach Kruger, who is also an NBC guy. Zach, how we doing today?
What's going on, guys? It is officially bowl season. We've been working on the opt-out tracker a little bit these last couple of days, trying to get the boots on the ground for every player who has either been out due to injury, declaring for the NFL draft, entering the transfer portal, which we know that's just been absolutely insane these last couple of weeks now. We're a couple weeks into the transfer portal opening. So it's been crazy. The bowl games have been massively affected by it. I think I got a couple plays to go on based on some of these things, and ready to just get into it and see what we can do this next couple of weeks as bowl season officially unfolds.
Yeah. Hey, I hear you on every single way, man. You've been doing great work. The bowl season tracking is a big deal in college football.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it's so hard to keep up with all of it. So, I mean, you got a couple plays, and in the games that you have plays in, Eric and I also have plays in. So I'm going to do you the liberty, Zach, of choosing where we can start today. Any choice. It could be your best bet, and then we'll go from there with our plays too.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll just go right down the list of the 3 games I've highlighted so far. Earlier on, it was Oregon State minus, I think it was 10.5. I had them at. That's since moved to -8, which I still like that play a lot. Florida, we know, has been one of the more decimated teams by opt-outs and by transfers. Quarterback Jalen Kitna, the number 2 quarterback, was outright dismissed from the team due to some things he's going through right now. So Florida's looking to start their 3rd-string quarterback, Jack Miller, a former 2020 4-star recruit per 247 Sports composite rankings. Jack Miller has yet to start a game in his college career. He has just attempted 14 passes for that career line, completed 7 of them for 101 yards and no touchdowns. He's going to be down his best offensive lineman, Osiris Torrance, who's also entered the draft. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Ventrell Miller, linebacker for Florida, is also going to be out. And it's going to be tough, I think, for Florida, who is 6-6 on the season, 7-5 against the spread, but they're facing a 9-3 Oregon State team. Oregon State 10-2 against the spread. And those 3 losses that Oregon State has this year, they come kind of just against the teams you think that they would likely come against in USC, Utah, and Washington. So I don't think that those 3 losses are anything that you're looking at going, wow, that's egregious. Whereas Florida, they have a loss against Vanderbilt on their resume. Vanderbilt certainly a tougher team than they were last year, but beating Florida and now Florida getting a 9-3 Oregon State team, that's very tough. Not down too many key players. Tight end Luke Musgrave is out, which could be tough. He accounted for 169 receiving yards and a touchdown. I think, the contribution that he offers in the running game for Damian Martinez could be somewhat impacted by his absence. Martinez rushing for 100-plus yards in 6 straight games. But Oregon State's defense has been stout, top 35 in both points allowed per game and yards allowed per game. Jack Miller's going to have to get in there and kind of show that he can do whatever it was they thought he was capable of back when Ohio State first recruited him in 2020 as a 4-star recruit. And he's going to be getting his first real full game action in a bowl game in a tough spot. So I like Oregon State at -8 for this one. I just think that, quarterback is still a very valuable position, and it's asking him a lot to try to go in there against a good Oregon State team and keep it within 8 points. So I'm taking Oregon State for that game.
Yeah, that's an interesting play, Zach. Absolutely. And when it comes to Oregon State, what's important for people to understand too is this is a team that plays very slow, 122nd in terms of pace of play. Again, behind Damian Martinez, sensational freshman phenom who really tore up camp and took over the job from Deshaun Fenwick, who was a highly touted South Carolina transfer. So with Oregon State, they're ranked 10th in terms of overall pass defense in the country, 6.3 yards per pass attempt. That's 15th in the country. Very stout in terms of their secondary. And as you discussed, Anthony Richardson will not be under center for Florida. It will be Jack Miller time, the Ohio State transfer. And with Florida, what they do well, what they do best as a team is they run the ball. I mean, this is Billy Napier, first-year head coach. We saw that identity that he had with Louisiana, where he had that rotation of backs, Elijah Mitchell being one of them, who's now a running back in the NFL for San Francisco. Mm-hmm. But he's kept that going here. Montreal Johnson is over-under is at 85.5. I think that's a pretty reasonable number, despite the fact that they're playing against a slowly paced team, that tough defense. But they're 53rd in terms of passing acumen. So it's very clear what Florida is going to want to do. They're going to want to have a similar game style that Oregon State wants to do, which is run the ball, control the clock. And I don't see that being favorable to Jack Miller's passing yardage over. I think that he opened up at amazingly right at 205.5 on FanDuel 2 days ago. That got bet immediately down. DraftKings opened up at 189.5. We're seeing that's down to around 179 right now, maybe even 175 in some places. So we see where the tea leaves are going in terms of how the trend is. So I'm going to back the under for Jack Miller's passing yardage, given game script and the fact that Oregon State has an incredible secondary.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. Attacking the quarterback props has been very successful for us all season, especially taking the unders, and definitely in his first start in a bowl game. You don't know how much he's going to bring you, but, I don't know. I did, and in the article, I locked up Florida plus the 10.5. early. Obviously, now it's looking at 7.5 on DraftKings and some other books, moving off of that 8. So a lot of money is coming in on Florida and Billy Napier, and I think it's interesting because, I mean, if you bet trends, double-digit underdogs have performed well the last 3 years in bowl season, but Billy Napier as a double-digit dog is 17-3-1 ATS in the last 21, and as an underdog this season, 5-0 ATS. So I think a lot of people are running to back Florida because of that, and Oregon State is the longest active ATS covering team in the country right now with 6 straight covers. So, if you're like Zach, right now is definitely the best time to be betting Oregon State. If you can wait and get that 7, you're getting the best number possible on Oregon State. But for someone like me who got Florida at plus 10.5, not much value in me telling you guys go bet Florida plus 7 with Jack Miller at quarterback. I don't know what he's really going to be capable of, but I do think Florida has enough talent to try and avoid their first losing season, back-to-back losing seasons since the late 70s. Oh, my Lord. So, Gators, stand up, chomp away, let's go. Unless you're Zach, then, go Beavers and all that. But, Zach, what's the next game you want to talk about?
Looking again at potentially dire quarterback situation, we're looking at BYU versus SMU. SMU, when I saw it, I sent you the picks. It was SMU -4. It looks like that's still the case right now. And SMU is going to be down Rashee Rice, wide receiver, star wide receiver. He's dealing with the foot injury. He's going to be out. That's 96 catches for 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns that they'll be down. But he's also really the only significant player that we know of that SMU is going to be down. They're still going to have Tanner Mordecai. He threw for 31 touchdowns, over 3,200 yards this season. You may remember he threw for 370 yards and 9 touchdowns against Houston earlier this year. Probably not going to happen today, but still fun to just look back on what an absurd week that was in that Houston game. But some other things that I like with SMU, like I said, Rashee Rice is going to be out, but they're going to have Jordan Curlian, who has missed 3 games this year. He's still accounted for 31 catches, 538 yards, and 5 touchdowns. My best guess is that Curly is going to be moving into that wide receiver 1 role vacated by Rashee Rice. I took a little bit closer look at some of Curly's numbers. Some things that I found interesting was that he actually ranks better than Rice in a couple per play metrics. Yards per reception, he's slightly above Rice. He has a higher catch rate than Rice this season, and his yards after contact per reception was about 3 yards better than Rashee Rice. So I think Curly has kind of shown an ability to certainly offer some explosive playmaking ability. He's going to be facing a BYU defense that's allowed the 100th most points per game this year at 30.0. They've allowed the 39th most passing yards per game at 409.7, and the 48th most, I flipped that up. 48th most passing yards per game at 235.7, and the 39th most yards per game at 409.7. So BYU defensively has not been offering the most stout of numbers for opposing offenses to face. And then on top of that, they're going to be likely out Jaren Hall. This seems to be kind of a scenario that's been kind of beat around the bush. It seems like based on what I saw yesterday, their head coach came out and said Jaren Hall continues to trend down. So unless they're just pulling the greatest, dupe of all time, I'm not expecting Jaren Hall to play. They said he was spotted on a scooter on Friday. So, for what it's worth in terms of making this play, I think that's probably going to instill enough confidence to assume that Hall will be out. Backup quarterback Jacob Conover, he's already out. He's transferred to Arizona State. So BYU is possibly looking at a mixture of 3 different quarterbacks who they may potentially rotate out. They've in and out. They've already suggested as much. Wide receiver Puka Nacua, he may also be out. His status is up in the air. So a lot of key offensive players, again, sidelined for BYU. Nacua and Jaren Hall being out would just be brutal. Again, betting against quarterbacks or teams without quarterbacks, I think is something that, we should probably be encouraging a little bit. I remember back towards last year's Pinstripe Bowl between Maryland and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech basically lost every quarterback known to man last year heading into that bowl game. Which is certainly not quite the scenario we're looking at here with either Florida or BYU, but just for some perspective, the Hokies only entered that game as 4.5-point underdogs against Maryland, which just felt completely absurd. They lost 54-10. So I don't think books are always great at adjusting for the fact that a team may be rolling out a quarterback they otherwise would have no interest in playing if they didn't have to, and that maybe this 4-point number that SMU is getting could be something they could easily cover, potentially facing a QB3 or QB4 BYU.
Yeah, what's a really important thing about bowl season, and we saw it yesterday in the first 2 games, is being able to parse what is fact from fiction when it comes to both coach speak and it comes to opt-outs. And that's a really good example. This is Puka Nacua, where he's already, had some injury issues this year. He's really played through some ailments. Props to Nacua. He's fought through and he's played. So, it's a testament to this kid's toughness. But if you look at some of the early mock drafts and just some of the early boards that have been put out there, Nacua has really risen up draft boards compared to where he was preseason. So he actually does have a lot to lose here if he goes out and he's compromised and he gets hurt. So the analogy I'll make will be yesterday with the UAB game. Dwayne McBride, the nation's leading rusher. We've seen him, again, similarly to Nacua, really tick up draft boards in the offseason or as soon as the season ended. We've seen his name certainly be mentioned along with Rashee Rice in terms of the best skill position players at the G5 level. It didn't make any sense for McBride to play yesterday. Yeah. There was conjecture around it in terms of the past 2 weeks. Is he going to play? Is he not? If it doesn't make sense for somebody to play and opt out, my general feeling is I consider him to be opting out. Unless you get a Bryce Young situation where he comes out and he specifically says, yes, I'm playing against Kansas State. I'm going to assume that these guys who have a lot to lose are going to get the correct advice and they're not going to play. That being said, that's what happened with Dwayne McBride yesterday. Jermaine Brown was an absolute instant smash play at 70.5 rushing yards. He well cleared it. And I think we're going to get a similar situation today where Nacua, I don't think he's playing. Yeah. You have Jaron Hall. I'm going to say I don't think he's playing as well. There's already been some attrition on the staff for BYU after the season when Kalani Sitake, their head coach, took care of their offensive coordinator. He's gone. So there is a little bit of, moving parts there. Their defense as well, BYU, is hammered, destroyed in terms of the attrition they're dealing with as well. So it's not just the offensive side. It really is both sides of the ball for BYU as they opened as 1.5-point favorites. And now we see they're on the other side, +4. So with their defense, horrible, 122nd in terms of defense. That is not a typical BYU team. What they do well is they are efficient offensively. They're not particularly quick. They're slow, 81st in pace, but they make the most of their opportunities. 14th in EPA, 6.6 yards per play. That's 17th in the country. Pretty balanced in terms of their pass and rush ratio. That all goes out the window without the continuity in their passing game. With SMU, Mordecai's playing. This is his swan song. This will be the last time we see him. As you mentioned, they do have weapons on the outside. We will see unveiled. Maybe some Dylan Goffney, Jordan Curley, as you mentioned. And with SMU, they had a tough early season schedule. They lost at Maryland, TCU, UCF, Cincinnati. Those are 4 really tough games. But if you look down the stretch, won 4 of their last 5 with win expectancies above 75% in all of those games, with their lone loss being to Tulane, who's the AAC champ. I love SMU in this spot.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk you off that either. You guys are talking me into throwing SMU in my money line parlays today, the way it sounds. But I just look at 2 defenses that don't want to be out there all season long. SMU, I've watched too much of their defense to even think about sniffing an under. But without BYU and without Jaron Hall and all these guys, I mean, I can understand too why this could be a lower scoring affair. But I'm looking at a couple different options in this game. Obviously, there's no player props. Eric, you and I were talking about that, trying to see how many options we could get in this game. But we're gonna have to wait. But right now, SMU's team total is 34.5. I think that's somewhere I'm leaning right now for sure, because that's very possible on BYU's defense. But then you see BYU's team total 30.5. And honestly, man, I mean, SMU's defense is so bad. I hope a lot of teams should be able to score 30 on them. So I lean the over 64.5, but with all the guys we talked about that could be out and not being officially out right now, we could see that line come down even more. So I'm going to wait to bet this game in general, but I think SMU is definitely looking like the right side 100%.
And that's ticked down. That started out at 68. The over-under.
Yeah, well, 71.5 actually.
So I'm sorry, 71.5. When we wrote our column, it was at 68. It had already gone down. It's gone down a full touchdown. That should tell you which way the wind is blowing with BYU. Despite the fact, again, SMU 120th in D, 125th against the rush. Brutal.
Yeah, absolutely brutal. And we do have a question here we're going to get to before we get to Zach's last pick and our picks in that game as well. Shane wants to know, is Jack Miller playable at 170 on Prize Picks? Aaron also wants to know.
My boy Sugar Shane, absolutely Shane Whitted, one of the guys who's been with us throughout the whole season. So much respect for Shane. Geez, as mentioned, it started out at 205.5, and now we've whittled it all the way down to 170 on Prize Picks. Wow, I mean it's you. The thing is, as you mentioned, there's no Kitna, there's no Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty reasonable to expect we'll get a full game out of Jack Miller, despite the fact that, as discussed, Florida doesn't want to throw much. I still think, as a gambler, I still think I would lean under the 170 as opposed to over. But it takes a lot of the luster out of it going from 189.5, which is where it was last night when we wrote up the show sheet, to wake up this morning and we're already down in the 170s. It's like, oh wow, here we go. But I probably would still lean under, but it's getting dicey at 170.
Yeah, definitely. I would say be a smaller unit play if you're definitely taking the under. The over would be a tough bet. I love what my guy Dylan said here. UFF's going to run the ball. Control and cover, baby. Yes, sir. Chomp away, Gators. But yeah, we did get screwed a little bit in this game with value because, you've obviously lost now 19 yards of value on your play. Florida, I had a 10.5. That's down to 7.5. When we woke up this morning, it was 9.5 and 9. So that's how fast college football bowl games move in general. But we're hoping we can get ahead of some of that right now. And if you guys can, if you like SMU, now might be the time to play SMU. So I think that's what we got from that one. Zach, where are you taking us next, buddy?
Next one I got, we are going Fresno State, Washington State. I got Fresno State -4.5. A lot to like about Fresno State heading into this game. First of all, it appears that their only opt-out is going to be a lightly used defensive back. He was a depth piece at best. So it doesn't appear that Fresno State's going to have a lot of opt-outs, which I think is actually key here for several reasons. But chief of those reasons is they're going to have quarterback Jake Haener and wide receiver Jalen Moreno-Cropper, two players who, by all accounts, could really opt out if they wanted to. Both of them, playing in their final game with Fresno State. But they're going to play this game. They're going to take on a Washington State team that's just been decimated by opt-outs on the other side. We'll get to that in a second. But Haener, 2,600 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's been solid enough for Fresno State at this point in time through the season, certainly well enough to get them to and through the Mountain West Championship game against Boise State. They ended up winning that one, which is part of the reason why Haener came back to Fresno State after opting out. It was to come back, be under Coach Jeff Tedford, who had originally recruited him. Once upon a time, when he first arrived to Fresno, Tedford left, came back in 2022. Haener decided to remove himself from the portal and stay. I think at this point in time, Haener's just kind of checking off a to-do list for things he wanted to do before leaving for the NFL. He's got the Mountain West Championship checked off. Now I think he wants to go out and win a bowl game with Tedford. They're going to look to do that today, entering as 4.5-point favorites against Washington State. Jalen Moreno-Cropper, as I mentioned, 79 catches, just over 1,000 yards with 5 touchdowns. Expected to play, and that's Haener's number one target. So Haener gets his number one target in Moreno-Cropper. He has completed 72% of his passes this season, which is second in the nation among qualified quarterbacks. And now they're going to be facing a Washington State defense that's allowed the 19th most passing yards per game, just over 265 there. And Fresno State's defense on the other side, they've been one of the more stout in the country, allowing 20.5 points per game. That's 26th, allowing 350 total yards per game. That's 40th fewest. And then they're allowing under 200 passing yards per game, which is 23rd fewest in the nation, which does not spell great things for quarterback Cam Ward, Washington State, and the Cougars, who are throwing at a nation high in terms of at least this slate. No team on this weekend's games is throwing at a higher rate than Washington State. They're at 64.6%, and they are down 3 of their top 4 receivers who have either opted out or unable to play because of injury. You got Dejon Stribling. He's out. He caught 602 yards, 5 touchdowns. Donovan Ollie, he's out, 483 yards, another 3 scores. And then Renard Bell, 315 and 2. Those 3 wide receivers are out. I believe if my math was correct earlier in the day, I calculated they're down roughly 180 targets in their offense. That's a massive loss for Ward. I think in terms of a DFS play, which I did put in my article, Robert Farrell, a slot receiver, he's probably going to find a little bit bigger role. He was their number 2 receiver in several categories this season. I think he could possibly find a little bit bigger of a role. And then I like Nakia Watson as a DFS play as well. 15-plus carries in 4 straight games, 733 yards, 8 touchdowns rushing, another 290 yards and 4 receiving. I think Watson and Farrell could both be valuable DFS plays here because, again, Washington State is down so many key receiving options in this game, facing a Fresno State team that's been stout on defense all year long. I mean, when you truly gut the core of what this offense is focused on, which is, in fact, passing the ball, I think it's going to make for a difficult time for Washington State to cover this 4.5-point number. And then on the flip side of it, they got a defense that's been giving up yards through the air all season, and they're facing a team that's not down any offensive players in their most important areas of what they like to do offensively. So I like Fresno State minus 4.5 here. I think that Washington State's just down too many players to make up for this. They've also got a couple key linebackers out as well who they're going to be replacing with guys with no experience.
Yeah. As you mentioned, salient points. Their top 2 wide receivers, 2 of the top 3 are in the portal. Bernard Bell has been injured. It was assumed he would miss this game. However, it just kind of came out recently this morning that their head coach, Jake Dickert, said he is now a game time decision. I don't know if that's gamesmanship or how they want to play that. But I do think it's going to be tough to really project him to do much. The problem from a props perspective in this game is we don't have many. There's a little bit here and there, but specifically what I'd like to point out is the quarterback position here. This game opened up with a 24-yard spread on Jake Haener between FanDuel and DraftKings. He was at 300.5 on FanDuel, and on DraftKings, he was down at 276.5. So both of these quarterbacks, the same was true with Cam Ward, where there was a 17-yard spread between the 2 books. And that has even continued. It's shortened up a little bit, but there's still 12 yards on each of these 2 quarterbacks in differential between the 2 major books. I originally had taken Cam Ward at 267.5 under passing yardage. We've seen both books move in that under direction. It's currently this morning as it sits, 254.5 on DraftKings, and it's actually 245.5 on FanDuel. So there's been some serious movement to that under because, frankly, it's as Zach mentioned, their wide receiver core is depleted. 3 of their starting 4 are out. The only one that's going to be here, Robert Farrell, who has a 61.5 receiving yards line. He's the starting left slot receiver. Bernard Bell is the starting right slot receiver. So where I don't think we'll see Bell, the player that would step into that role would be Orion Peters, who has been for the last pretty much the second half of the season. DeJon Stribling, who is the starter, now in the portal, he has been Stribling's understudy. Anytime Stribling's coming out of the game, it's been Orion Peters. While he is not listed for a receiving yardage prop, he is on FanDuel at plus 390 to score a touchdown. That is the best odds you're going to get for anybody in that entire game. And the fact that he will be the starting right slot receiver, which is the most attractive part of the passing offense in this air raid system that Eric Morris, their offensive coordinator, employs. I like that at a 4-1 shot. So that's a little sprinkle for me on that game.
You're already getting ahead on the sprinkles, man.
Sorry,
come on,
Eric. Excited.
Giving the people what they really want. Yeah, when I saw your sprinkle sheet today, I was like, "What? I don't know any of these guys, but I know that Eric knows something about them." There's even a tight end in there. We're betting on a tight end to score a touchdown.
We're trying to do our best.
I can't wait, and it's in the best game possible too. I'm super excited. So yeah, it's gonna be a great show. We got another special guest for you guys waiting backstage. We're gonna bring here in a second. Zach, awesome stuff. Going over your plays. You got Oregon State on the spread. They're down to around 7 or 8 wherever you can shop. You got SMU -4, which I love. I think I'm gonna might add that to my card. And then you got Fresno State minus the 4.5. Anything you want to plug for the people to pay attention to, including your opt-out tracker?
I mean, the opt-out tracker is going to be the big one. I try to get in there at least once or twice a day and update it, keeping the spreads and the spreads and the totals both up to date with whatever we're currently seeing whenever I check in. Usually I hit it around the morning or the mid-afternoon to keep it somewhat on par when people are hopefully awake and reading it. So definitely check into the opt-out tracker. It's going to be, updated throughout the season as best we can to make sure we get all the opt-outs and all the line and total movements over the next couple weeks.
Love the opt-out tracker. It's fire.
Yeah, it's most important. So make sure you guys follow Zach on Twitter. Appreciate you always, brother. Best of luck with your plays today.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. You too.
See you, Zach. And we got a comment here in the chat. And you know what? When someone's demanding something, we usually have to give them what they want. What do you think, Eric? Should we give him what he wants?
We got to give the people what they want.
You are the best when it comes to singing, my friend. Mike Bainbridge, welcome to the show.
How we doing?
Bainbridge, welcome, my friend.
I don't think I've been on a podcast in the last year and a half where Eric has not sung a verse from a song.
Well, Michael and I last season actually had a show together on BetSperts, so we got to do this quite a bit, shall we say. I mean, we had a little bit of DFS in there and everything, but I am thrilled to be able to bring you on and run it back here for bowl season. My friend Mike Bainbridge, please give Bruno, your beautiful English bulldog, a pet for me. I'm an English bulldog guy. I've been an adoption coordinator for the San Diego Bulldog Rescue for 10 years. So props to Mr. Bainbridge.
Yeah, he was in here, but then he started snoring. I was like, we can't have that sound in
And if there's anything English bullies do, it's snore. Oh, yeah. Sleep, snore, basically hibernate during the day. That's what my boy Luke would do. He would hibernate for 10 hours. You're not home, it doesn't matter. As soon as you get home, all right, let's go, Dad. Time to have some fun. So good for you, sir, for being an excellent English bulldog owner. And obviously, we have some props to talk about today. Now, don't we, Mr. Bainbridge?
Absolutely. Our specialty, right?
It is our specialty, our gimmick for if any of those wrestling fans out there would be. So, Mike, well, we haven't gotten to talk about this game yet, so I figure we might as well roll right into it since this is one of your first plays to be talking about. Southern Miss at Rice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now the fun begins.
Biggest game on the board, baby.
That's right.
Go. This is where the money's going to be made today.
That's right. You wanted the best. You got the best. We're here for Southern Miss Rice. Currently 6.5-point favorite Southern Miss. It's been trending a little bit down after spiking. It was only like 3 points, I want to say, at the beginning, and then went immediately up because USM, Southern Miss, their defense has been legit this season. 16th in rushing defense per PFF. 23rd in EPA per play, 15th in success rate against. So when it comes to the group of five, truly one of the elite defenses of the lower division. Now, when it comes to Rice, one of the stat you will hear a lot about the Owls, led the nation with 30 turnovers, averaged 2.5 per game. Now, it's going to be tough to overcome that margin when defensively they rank 116th in D, 125th in EPA per play, 105th in net points per drive. It's 26th worst in the country when it comes to that spread. And in terms of coming into this game, they've lost 4 of the last 5. With their one win, they had a 1% win expectancy against Charlotte. Somehow they pulled it out. So congratulations with that. But when it comes to Southern Miss, Mike, bring us through what you're seeing with the passing game and specifically with their quarterback, Trey Lowe, and how you feel about his prospects for this week.
Well, I hate how you just rattled off all the terrible defensive statistics for Rice.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Yet we're taking the table on Trey Lowe passing. But yeah, that's kind of one of the top plays that I pegged when the props started releasing was Trey Lowe under. I think most books have it now at 207.5. I think at Caesars or one of the others you can get it actually at 208.5.
I'd see 208, yeah.
Yeah, very tiny value.
DraftKings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean it helps when like part of a couple of these books aren't even releasing Trey Lowe passing stats because they're not even confident enough to put it up, right? So yeah, that's a definite underplay for me. Regardless of the Rice statistics, hasn't covered it 3 of the 4 games that he's played. And I think the biggest argument in favor of the under there is I was reading an article from the Biloxi Sun Herald down there in Mississippi, and it's expected that Frank Gore Jr., and we've seen this in the past too, and so it should be expected, I guess, but they're expecting to use that kind of super back role, what they call it. So he's going to get 1 or 2 passing plays in this game, and we've seen in the past that those usually result in touchdowns. So you're literally taking away at least 1, maybe 2, potential drives away from Trey Lowe if we see Frank Gore in that super back role. So, I mean, he's got one option in the passing game in Jason Brownlee. I know you're going to hit on their wide receiver 2 a little bit later, Eric. So I like the under here, despite the poor statistics defensively from Rice.
Well, to be fair, on balance, yes, does Rice struggle defensively? Of course. But as mentioned, they play at a very slow pace. Southern Miss plays the 75th pace in the country as well. So we shouldn't expect a particularly rapid game script. And when it comes to Southern Miss, hey, they're the 124th ranked offense in the country. I talked about their D. I didn't talk about their offense. This is not a particularly efficient unit. 38% success rate. It's 113th in the country. 120th in EPA per play. 1.6 points per drive. That's 111th in the country. So this is a team that has completely relied on their defense all season long. It's not like they've been explosive to any stretch of the imagination. And as you mentioned, clearly their best player on offense is Frank Gore, who has inherited a role that is similar to former Southern Miss running back and former Atlanta Falcon, might still be, the Honorable Judge Lance Ito Smith. So we've seen backs thrive in that sort of system, in that sort of a usage. And I think we will certainly see that again from Frank Gore. That being said, Trey Lowe at 207, 208.5. You and I are both heavily leveraged on that position. I am strong on that under as well. So we are simpatico, and I'm going to give that a strong recommendation to play and even call it my best bet of the week. 11-3 this season on my best bets so far. I did lose last week on Quentin Johnson. I'm ashamed of myself for that. That being said, I'm going to make good. I should be. I'm going to make good on my best bets. I'm going to go 12-3 and hit that 75% mark, or what was that, 80%? 80%. And I'm right there on Trey Lowe with Mike.
I love that. I mean, you know what that sounds like to me.
What does it sound like, Vaughn?
What does it sound like? Squad ride. Let's go.
Squad ride. Light them up.
We got a number 1, baby. We're 3-1 on the year. We lost by 1 yard on our one loss. JJ McCarthy. Don't you ever get sacked again in your life, young man. But it's
That's
okay. Right. I think Trey Lowe is going to be a great
ride last night too. Nice squad ride yesterday on Kabori Barnes.
He only doubled his yardage.
He only doubled it. That was frankly that was an insulting line. It shouldn't have ever been put up. Whoever continued to propagate that line deserves to have their employment reviewed. I'm just saying it. Wherever that institution is, why you kept it up? It was at 63.5. It went down to 60.5.
Yeah.
Shameful. That cannot go down. Whoever that whale was who bet that down, you're a lot lighter in the bank account department because that was a hard
Gorion Barnes is going to be a weekly thing next year for us, probably.
4-1 in the squad ride. It's on. It's on with Trey Lowe. So
it's on.
Love it.
And I have a pretty ugly option here, but he might not even play the guy that I like, but he should play. But, Mike, I'd love to hear your opinion on this guy. Eric, I'm trying to steal your flow with the touchdown props, I guess.
Okay.
But can I interest you, guy, in a little Luke McCaffrey? Not Christian. His little brother, though. Luke McCaffrey. This guy has been a boss. 6 touchdowns in his last 7 games. I don't know if you guys have watched him at all much, but he can do it all. He gets reverses, screens, goes deep. And he's purposely screwed me out of bets multiple times this season by going crazy. So I'm targeting Luke. He hasn't played in his last 2 games, And this is kind of a game where, if he wants to play, he's only a sophomore, he can play. But do you guys have any opinion on Luke McCaffrey?
He should play. I don't think he's an NFL draft prospect that he can afford to sit out. But everything that I read, he is expected to play. And I think the anytime touchdown prop is perfect for him because as you mentioned, he does it all. Former quarterback, he'll be using the Wildcat, he'll run the ball, catch passes. I mean, that's a play absolutely worth it.
I hit Christian McCaffrey on Monday night, so I feel like I gotta hit both McCaffrey brothers in the same week if that's a thing, right? Eric, you with me?
I am with you, sir. Yeah, I have no problem on the Luke McCaffrey anytime touchdown line. As mentioned, he gets used in every way. He was banged up the past couple of games, and it definitely hurt them. Because they need playmakers. Bottom line, this is the Rice Owls. Okay. They need somebody who can make plays. He will be touching the ball early and often. No problem at all with that anytime touchdown line. I do have another prop that I am interested in for this game, and that's the quarterback for Rice, A.J. Padgett. Now, obviously, I've spoken chapter and verse about the Southern Miss defense. A.J. Padgett was listed at 179.5. He's still hanging around there. I think he's dipped a little bit at this point, but we saw him come in. He's only started one game this year. Okay. Rice has had a lot of turnover at that quarterback position. It's not like he's particularly seasoned there. He did start against North Texas in the final game of the season, only threw 22 passes, completed 13, but that's against North Texas. Went for 229 yards. Again, 10.4 yards per attempt. That is an unsustainable rate against the Southern Miss pass defense. I just cannot see that being replicated. And again, where you mentioned Luke McCaffrey, I see him being used in a creative manner. I see him when it comes down to short yardage situations, when it comes down to within the 5, maybe even within the 10, you're going to see him used in that Wildcat role, and it's going to cut down the snaps for Padgett, personally. He's, again, inexperienced quarterback, 3 stars, young, going up against a stout defense, pretty, 180 yards. Show me. I'm going with the under on AJ Padgett. I'm going on the under on both these QBs, obviously. One for 2 completely different reasons, but both of them are inexperienced. Both of them were not the starters for either of their teams, and they've been pressed into service. We're seeing a lot of that in the bowl season, at least in the early going. I'm going to fade both of them.
We're talking about a lot of unders here, but Shane in the chat says, I love Watson's receiving yards over, and I find that interesting because there's a guy that Mike's betting on with the last name Watson. Could it be the same guy on the same day? Mike, is it true?
Yeah, I get a little tentative with this play. I'm obviously confident in it, but it's like, when you watch those, the college football pregame show or the NFL pregame show where they have the panel and every single person picks the same team. Everybody is on this play right now, which it makes sense, right? You guys have talked about it earlier in the show. They're down at least 2 of their starting receivers, if not 3. Watson has smashed this line each of the last 4 games. 7 out of the last 10, I believe, he's hit this mark. And his targets are up too. I think the last 2 games, 40% of his season-long targets came in just those 2 games. So just the depletion of the wide receiver core. Nakia Watson has been really outstanding for them, especially late in the season. So I'm on this play. I'm also sprinkling in a little over on his fantasy score on Prize Picks. Our projection at the CFF site has him at 20 fantasy points. I just think his utilization in this game, I think, is going to be featured. Fresno State, a good defense. They shut down Boise State in that Mountain West championship, but 5 of the last 6 teams that Fresno has faced, those teams have rushed for over 4 yards a carry. So they are struggling to defend the run. So like this play, receiving play for Nakia Watson, and I like his fantasy points over on Prize Picks.
I am all about that Nakia Watson play. I even hit up Vaughn before the show to said, hey, buddy, can you get that in for me?
During the show.
During the show. Well, I meant to put it on my sheet, and then I saw it on Mike's. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot to put in Nakia Watson. And we had to get Nakia Watson in. I love it. Absolutely love it. As Mike mentioned, he's gone over the last 4 games. It's become increasingly clear that Nakia Watson was underutilized at Wisconsin. I mean, you got to feel bad for him. In comes Jonathan Taylor was there beforehand. You're not touching him. And then obviously in comes Braylon Allen. Good luck. And, through no fault of his own, he's kind of out of a job. He just had 2 studs in front of him. Goes over there to Washington State, and he's been a revelation in the second half of the season. As mentioned, be it his rushing, carries, be it the amount of targets. He's gotten 13 targets over the past 2 games. They've relied upon him even more as the season has gone on. I think this is just, you have to take it. We've had a sort of love-hate relationship at times on this particular show with running back receiving overs, unders. Like, they can be so volatile at times. It can look so good, and then just game script throws it out of the way. I just think there's no way this doesn't happen. I love Nakia Watson. Is one of my favorite plays of the week. Right on, Michael.
Yeah, this line in the game for the game total dropped from 55.5 down to 52.5, and everyone expecting Fresno State's defense to really show up in here. My best bet's going to be in this game, actually. And I'm not very confident that we're going to see a low-scoring defensive type of game. I think we're going to see both teams air it out. Talking to a lot of my comrades in the college football space, Eric, they like the over, and I'm with them in this game. I mean, I'm looking at Washington State as a dog, and I think that they're going to be throwing quite a bit in this game. They've allowed 30.6 points per game as an underdog this year, 1-5 on the money line also. So they suck trying to win games as an underdog, which gives Fresno State a little advantage coming off a great game. But Fresno is a favorite, 6-3 to the over. Jake Haener, Cam Ward. I mean, we know these guys can stretch the field. And there's a lot of guys I feel like that Washington State has that could probably step up in the receiving game here. And Mike, I think that you're on one of them when I was looking at him, because when I looked at this guy's game log and he was starting today, I was like, yeah, it doesn't look very impressive, but there's probably something I'm missing. And then I see it pops up on your sheet. So talk to me about Lincoln Victor. Great name, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of worked in our favor, Vaughn, when you're, and I assume a lot of people are doing the same thing. You look at his game logs and he's just under, right? And that worked in our favor. If you look on Prize Picks, he's down to 36.5 receiving yards, excuse me. And if you look, I think on DraftKings, it's even odds at 45.5 receiving yards. So right. I think that's a really strong play on the over on Prize Picks. The only hesitation I have with Victor, his 5.3 ADOT. So when he's getting thrown the football, it is not far downfield, right? It is within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. So, but I again, Deshaun Stribling out. Donovan Ali out. Renard Bell probably out. If he plays, it's not expected to be much. So down to top 3 receivers. And this is kind of a conviction play for me. I was reading an article, I guess this past week, because of all these transfers, Lincoln Victor gave a passionate speech in front of the team saying basically, hey, get on the bus or get out, right? So he's fired up for this game. So I kind of like those storylines when you're looking at these prop plays. He's going to be a top 2 target, I think, with for Cam Ward with Robert Farrell, and then hopefully Nakia Watson as well. So definitely like this over, particularly on Prize Picks.
Yeah, one of the important aspects of the early prop slate here for today is how to parse out the Wazoo wide receiver situation. I mean, who is going to get the work? We see Robert Farrell Katz is at 61.5 on DraftKings. I don't feel comfortable going either way on that, simply because we don't know how it'll go. He has been used fairly often, especially in the second half of the season. He certainly ticked up. But, I mean, in terms of value, we don't have lines on a lot of these guys. One guy I wish we did have a line on is Leighton Smithson, wide receiver. He's averaging 50 snaps a game over the last 6 as the primary outside left wide receiver, whereas Donovan Ollie's the outside right. That's the spot that Lincoln Victor will be occupying. He's currently both of them, Victor and Smithson, who, again, are the two most tenured wide receivers on the team in terms of snap counts, in terms of what they've been doing leading up to this game, while Ollie and Stribling and Bell were still around. Those two guys, the ones that they were targeting, they were, on the outside, they're going to be involved. They're both at plus 260 to score a touchdown. We mentioned Orion Peters earlier, who's plus 390. It's just out of, total take a shot. But I think a more calculated risk would be Smithson or Victor. I think one of those two will end up probably catching one. You look at Robert Farrell, he's at minus 110. He's pretty much even money to catch a touchdown. Just doesn't make any sense of that. If you're going to take a little sprinkle, go for Smithson.
Yeah, no, I don't hate that whatsoever. I'm looking at the updated lines on DraftKings and FanDuel for a lot of the props right now, and people are hitting this game hard. Cam Ward's lines, drastically different on DK and FanDuel, so good luck with that, Eric, when you break that down. Jake Hayner's, the exact same. And I'm seeing Jordan Mims getting some heavy action as well, another guy we're going to be talking about. Lincoln Victor's updated line.
Yeah, where's he at?
Mims is at 89.5
Yeah.
On DraftKings. They do not even have him on FanDuel yet. No rushing or receiving props on FanDuel right now.
Interesting.
Would you play Victor at 40.5 receiving yards, Mike? That's what it is.
Yes, I would. I get a little tentative at the 45.5. But 40 I would. Yeah, we have Victor projected at 57 yards right now at the CFF site. So I would take the best line out there.
All right, everyone, go grab that. That's definitely going to be on the move. It's going to go on the move. We know that for sure. And you got one more play for us, Mike. I actually really like this one. I tell this one already when I saw it in there. This has actually moved up 1 yard to 52.5. But my RB1 in fantasy, this is his younger brother. And like I said, I'm riding with Luke McCaffrey today. So now I got to ride with Trevor Etienne too, right?
Yeah, brothers today. Yeah, I like this play. I mean, I was kind of surprised by our projection, but we have Etienne and Montrell Johnson at the same or around the same projection. I think it's like 82.5 for Montrell Johnson and close to 80 for Etienne today. So we're getting a lot of value here based on our projection. I mean, you're telling me that Etienne covered this against Georgia when he rushed for 53 yards? I think he can do the same against Oregon State today. So you guys mentioned it earlier in the show. They are down one starting offensive lineman, if not two.
So Cyrus Torrance is out. Yeah, he's opting out.
Okay, so that, a little tentative there. Jack Miller starting. They're probably going to load up on the run there, but I trust an SEC offense versus a Pac-12 defense here. I think you would agree we're going to see a run-heavy script here from Florida. And just I don't know. I trust the talent here, right? This is a 217-pound freshman. He covered this line in 3 of the last 5, maybe, if not 4 of the last 5. And again, he hit this against Georgia. I think he can hit it against Oregon State today. So I definitely like this play.
Yeah, I'm absolutely. I totally agree. As discussed, Billy Napier, we know what he does, and a big thing when it comes to the props and when it comes to myself, you, Mike, identifying props that we want to target, it comes to what teams do well. You don't want to back a prop on a team, like you said, if this was Florida and you have a wide receiver out there for Jack Miller right now, and you got a couple, Silas Bolden, 30.5, Ricky Pearsall, I would have a harder time backing those particular plays, even though they're going to have to throw at some point, as opposed to, we know Florida is going to run the rock. And if they can, they'll run it all day. So where you have a clear 1-2, pretty much 50-50 with Etienne and Johnson. Etienne has shown incredible juice. I mean, he has the ability to break chunk runs. No problem with that.
Yeah, I was just going to add, if you're tentative that seeing Oregon State is second in the Pac-12 in overall rush defense, the advanced metrics don't like their run D as much. I think they're, 82nd in explosiveness, allowed 92nd in rush success rate. So they're not as good as those high level statistics kind of indicate. So yeah, I like this. And I think at 52.5, he's minus 151 on Caesars. So public's backing
Really?
this as well. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's actually shocking. And that's a much sharper book than a DraftKings or a FanDuel that we're used to betting on. 52.5 is minus 110 right now on DK. So significantly good value there. Mike, definitely appreciate you, man. Plug whatever you got going on, your Twitter, any articles, shows, all that stuff, man.
Yeah. Thank you guys first for having me. Always enjoyed chopping it up with Eric and great to be on with you, Vaughn. I am at the CFF site. We do college fantasy football year round. We're at the end of the college fantasy season right now. So if you're interested in that, sign up for the site next year. But if you're interested in these props that we're suggesting, we do have statistical projections for every single game of the bowl slate. So if you're interested in that, we have the projections.
Yeah, I will say the CFF site does incredible work that Mike is the purveyor of. He writes up literally every single DFS game on the entire slate, every single one, every week. And again, of course, gets heavy into the college football player props. I do, Mike and I go through the stuff every week. So he's truly one of the best in the business. If you want to increase your information around anything college football related, DFS, fantasy, player props, CFF site is the place to go.
Well, I certainly can't follow that up. So, Mike, appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on the show so much, and we'll be sure to check out all your work, my guy.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Go Blue.
Mike.
Thank you. Go Blue, eh?
I do want to get one more in. We're getting late here, of course. We got a little bit later.
Let's run through our plays.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to Boise State, North Texas. I know, to the chagrin of everybody listening right now, because let's face it, everybody wants to talk about that game. But a particular prop that I'm on, it's probably no surprise. Austin Ani. I mean, he's a guy we've heard him. He's been on this show quite a few times, Vaughn. Good, bad, indifferent.
Uncle Austin.
He is Uncle Austin Ani, almost 30 years old. He's
me and him are the same age, and look what we're doing. He's playing quarterback in college, and I'm talking about betting on him.
Well, in Mr. Ani's defense, he was a professional baseball player. He did moonlight during the early phase of his career as a pro. So we'll it's understandable to be out there at 29, still Uncle Rico and the Rock out there. But when it comes to Mr. Ani, he is listed at 222.5 passing yards here today. And I got to tell you, that is, while reasonable against your rank and file Conference USA defense, like we're talking about Boise State here. Okay. Yeah. The Broncos started out 2-2 with Hank Bachmeier under center. It was a tough start. There's no doubt about it. They lost to a good Oregon State team, who we've talked about chapter and verse here, and dumped one to UTEP where they were 16.5-point favorites. Frankly, shameful. But since Taylor Green came in, they're 7-2. All right. And they actually made it to the Mountain West Championship, improbably, after the way that they had played over those first 4 games. But the important thing to remember here is Boise State's defense is the real deal and is really the catalyst for why they have been able to do so well. I just simply don't think, with their overall 15th overall, Boise, I don't think that North Texas is good enough to be able to move the ball against them. When we saw Austin Ani last, he was throwing up on himself against UTSA. We saw UTSA against Troy. All right. UTSA had no problem doing whatever they wanted. Anything they wanted against North Texas. North Texas had a hell of a time dealing with UTSA's pretty good front four that does a good job of getting pressure. They're not great against the run. That's where you want to attack them. But, man, they can bring heat. That's nothing compared to Boise State. Austin Oni was running for his life in that CUSA title game. I just don't think it happens, okay? Yes, it gets 222.5, which means he has to stay in the game the entire time. I think with a 29-year-old on his way out QB, Seth Luttrell, the head coach, has already been fired. That team's in disarray. They didn't expect to see Luttrell get fired. You heard some of the quotes they've had? They're like, what is happening here? He gets no rope after he's been a great coach here for 5 years. Anyways, there's a lot of turmoil around that program. The new staff, it's not new staff, but they don't know Austin Oni anything. And sure, they'll try to win this game, but if it ain't happening, why not throw in a backup to get somebody at least a little bit of experience as opposed to the outgoing 29-year-old. I'm taking the under 222.5 passing yards on Ostinoni against a stout Broncos D.
Yep, I just checked it up. The updated line is 221.5 on DraftKings, so you're getting a 1.1 yard difference. On FanDuel, though, all the way down to 208.
Oh, dude, yeah.
So if you guys are watching this right now and you want to tell that play, you want to go on DraftKings and get that 14, 15-yard difference, all right?
Absolutely.
Totally agree with you,
Attacking
Eric.
QBs
I mean,
today. Attacking them, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the way to go about these props. And, back and running back overs, we have a question in the chat on Frank Gore, whether we like his over 91.5 rushing yards. And you and I talked about this yesterday, and you said it's a little too high for my taste, but it's the way I would lean. I'm sure that's exactly what you said, right?
Yeah, exactly. A little high based on, as we discussed, the propensity for Southern Miss to probably use it in the passing game if needed. That being said, I do think that we know that Southern Miss wants to control the ball. They don't have an explosive offense. Again, 124th passing, but much better rushing the ball. That is what their identity is. They have to use Gore a lot because they simply, besides Brownlee, don't have a large supporting cast of talent. So he will be obviously the focal point of that offense. It's just a matter if he gets to 92. If you're feeling it, especially Marty, Marty has earned the right over the course of the season on this show where if he's got the feeling, if he's got the itch, then you go and scratch it, Marty. Nothing but respect, my brother.
Yes, really though. Marty always tweeting us. We appreciate it. We appreciate everyone that checks out this show and watches.
Everybody, thank you.
And as we've been on for this whole hour, a lot has happened. There's been a lot of line movements. Cincinnati and Louisville looks like the scoring has picked up now. We got a 42.5 over under. Getting spicy. Maybe we'll hit our little hedge, our little middle here. But I do want to point out that Boise State just grew to 12.5 point favorites. The over under is now 62. And the play that I was literally about to tell you guys is no longer available. So a little disappointed by that, but I did like, and I wrote this up a couple days ago on NBC article, Boise State's team total over 35.5. Similar to things that Eric was saying, really trust the Boise State defense. Do not trust the North Texas defense whatsoever. Seth Luttrell, 0-4, or North Texas 0-4 ATS in their last 4 bowl games. So a lot of people are going to back Boise State off of that. They have more experience in bowl games. And the 3 non-Power 5 teams Boise State has faced in the last 20 years, they've demolished them. 38, and 55 points. So North Texas, the game's in Frisco. It's in Texas. It doesn't scare me, Eric. But that one, sadly, probably won't be an official play because I see 37.5, 38.5 everywhere now.
Oh, boy.
Over the last 5 minutes. And
writing
that's
is
quite
on
the
the
jump.
wall, Vaughn. Yep.
Yeah, Boise State's about to smack them. I might do SMU and Boise State money line parlay, though. That's minus 112 odds. So I'm looking at that, and they add that to the card today just as a way to get some action on the Broncos. What other plays?
It's easy to see why that would go, for 35.5 points up. North Texas against the CUSA schedule has given up 333 points and 470 total yards per game. So where you have an upper echelon group of 5 team that frankly would probably be going up to the Pac-12 in the next couple of years after conference realignment. They are Power 5 caliber. That's a kill spot. Yeah, I'm in, baby. I'm in, bro.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say about North Texas before we run through all our plays here. North Texas changing conferences next year. They just wanted to clean house entirely and start fresh. They probably should have waited one more game. But we'll see how that affects them here. You never know. We do have a people's parlay for Eric wraps up his plays, and I give out my few. We did SMU money line in Southern Miss minus 6.5, plus 203. So nothing super crazy. We're not doing 3 or 4 legs today because uncertainty around a lot of players and what could happen. And honestly, we were all trying to fight over what picks, and we all kept agreeing on the same one. So SMU money line, Southern Miss minus 6.5, plus 203 odds. The people's parlay with the squad ride on Trelo under 207.5 to under 208.5. Whatever you could do. Eric, run through your plays. I know you talked about a couple guys. You might not have talked about Cam Ward or Jake Hayner in depth, or Jordan Mims, or Jarkarius Caston.
Yeah, I mean, geez, I got a few here, don't we? Yes, I did kind of dive into Cam Ward. Again, I got him at 267.5. It is now plummeted I still think it's probably playable at 256, which I think it was. I would not touch it at 245. Again, I love the Nakia Watson play. Mike is right on the money about that. I'm over on Jake Superior, Jake Haener. Again, he, big spread in his game. 276 he opened at. DraftKings 300.5 on FanDuel, which really gave us just an opportunity to potentially middle it if you want to go that direction. I didn't. I feel like that 276.5, it's right around that range here right now. It's gone up a little bit. I think maybe even 281.5. I like Haener to go over that. We've seen him up until the previous 2 games. He had gone over the 300 passing yards threshold almost every week. I mean, it had been right as rain. He did get banged up, and that's something to remember with Jake Superior is he got hurt during that middle portion of the season, and he's gutted it out, but it did kind of affect his performance a little bit. Last 2 games, especially against Boise, he only went for 184 yards. But again, look, Jake Haener threw for 184 yards against Boise in the Mountain West title game with a game script that they ended up losing 28-16, so they were throwing. Austin Aune is not better than Jake Haener. Jake Haener threw for 184. No, that's not happening. It's not happening. Under 221.5. That being said, Haener, before those 2 games, he didn't have to do anything against Wyoming. It was 30-0. They just left the horses in the barn and just rolled over them. But every game before that, 361 Nevada, 313 UNLV, 327 against Hawaii, 394 against San Diego State, 360 against Oregon State. They're going to come out and be chucking. This is an expose for Jake Haener. They want to send him off like the legend that he is at Fresno State, and he's going to be chucking. I am all over that over 276.5, whatever it is, Mark. Love that. Mm-hmm. And as we mentioned, Jordan Mims, the running back for Fresno State. Now, where they're playing Washington State, they're better in run defense, actually, than pass defense. They're a pretty darn good defense. They have a couple of guys who are missing due to opt-outs. But, look, Mims hasn't been this write it down every week. He's going for 100 yards, and, you can set your watch by it type of a back this season, right? And, to that effect, we'll go back to Boise, 25 carries, 83 yards, all right? And, again, excellent defense. 25 carries didn't break it. Week before, 16-52 against Wyoming. He feasted on Nevada, who's awful, for 156. UNLV, 21 carries for 70. It's been an up and down roller coaster for him when it comes to his performance. So where he's only cleared this mark, up at 95.5 3 times in the past 9 games, playing against a Power 5 defense in Wazoo, who is a quality unit. It's not like, Colorado they're going out there against. Yeah. I like it. I like the under here, and I'm pretty confident about that. That's why it's gone from 95.5 down to 89.5.
Yeah, I was going to say, I see the only place offered now is 89.5 at DraftKings. Yep. Juiced 130 to the under. So we know that's going to move to 86.5, 84.5.
Because that's a late game, too. It'll continue to go down as the day goes on. I'm in. I feel good about that.
Yeah, and last one you got is Caston. You break him down yet?
Jacarius Caston. Jacarius. Yes, Jacarius Caston for Southern Miss. As we talked about, we did go through that a little bit. Not a particularly competent offense. We haven't seen hardly anything from the 4.9 yards per play, 110th. We went into the EPA numbers, 120th, play the 75th rate of pace. And where you have a backup quarterback, Trey Lowe was not the nominal starter for most of the season. He got beat out. Where you have Frank Gore, excellent out of the backfield. Jason Brownlee's number 1. Caston has only really gone over this mark once in the last 6 games. He was banged up. When he came back, he didn't have the kind of route usage that you expect to. His most routes all season had been, in the past 2 months, had been 2 games ago. He only had 23 yards receiving. So I just think it's a case where you're getting a line where they're looking at what happened last in a game that had a heavy pass script. I think they're going to be salting this away a lot more. I don't think they want to pass the ball against Rice. I think they want to salt it away and grind them down and rely on their defense. 29.5 receiving yards, Caston. I am going under.
I love that. Yeah, I think Rice is going to be the team throwing the ball a ton compared to Southern Miss. Southern Miss is going to rely on Frank Gore, the couple running backs. And
and Rice got to get creative with Kim McCaffrey too, so that's the other factor. You have Gore and McCaffrey who are real, versatile running backs, kind of do a lot. It really is X factors in that game. It's going to be everyone's going to be talking about Southern Miss Rice, obviously, today. I mean, what a momentous matchup.
Obviously. Yeah, and speaking on that, we'll just hop into our money line sprinkles. Now, I actually chose this before. I could just take it out right now. No one even know, but now that I'm saying it, I guess I have to say it. But I did take a little snack on Rice today, just because that was one of the only ways I can make the game interesting if Luke McCaffrey does or does not play. But honestly, probably don't tell that. We got Southern Miss, baby. I did grab UCF, Liberty, Air Force, and Florida as my favorite moneyline sprinkles over the next 7 days. Obviously, Liberty, Air Force, and UCF don't play today, but those teams are all hanging between a +3 and a +5. We got UCF to beat Duke, Eric. I think Duke, they've been great all season, but, I mean, come on, you're laying 3 against UCF in a bowl game, bro? You just got here. Then we got Air Force and Baylor. I feel – Baylor looks too easy. Give me Air Force. They're going to grind it out. It's going to be hard for them to handle them. And then, give me Liberty as a 5.5-point underdog. I really don't know what they're doing as underdogs, in my opinion. We were high on the Liberty Flame this year. They're playing Toledo, though. So those are my money line sprinkles. We're going about it a little different way.
I love it. Well, yeah, I wanted to throw a little wrinkle in there as discussed because I figured, hey, it's bowl season. Let's take a look at some of these touchdown props. So we already talked about Orion's belt, Orion Peters for Wazoo at +390, and we also talked about a couple of the other guys, Leighton Smithson, and obviously Lincoln Victor and where they're at. But I'm going to go with I'm going to go really aiming high here. Going to Boise State and North Texas. And the lowest odds for any player to score a touchdown in that game is +460. So you're almost getting 5 times your money on FanDuel. If my man, Jake the Snake Roberts for North Texas, tight end, splits, he's, there's 2 tight ends for North Texas, Varkey's Gums, and there's Jake the Snake Roberts. Roberts has actually been playing more snaps than Gums over the past 6 games, averaging 22 pass snaps per game over the last 6. He's got 40 targets this season. So it's not like he's not out there. He doesn't exist. He's out there on the field. He's more in line, but he does those little tight end releases, and he'll get those shots. So where I see North Texas having a hard time moving the ball, if they get there, if they get close, within that 10, the gold zone, I think they're going to need to have some sort of misdirection. They're not going to be able to just straightforward get in the end zone against Boise. You're going to need to leak a tight end release out, have him chip somebody, and then leak up. I think that's how, if they're going to score, that's how they're going to do it. With Roberts out there for more snaps and Gums, more of the inline guy who will be using a little more trickery, has 40 targets a season, averaging 3 targets a game. He's the lowest TD prop on the board. You're getting 5-1 odds. Jake the Snake Roberts, I think he goes and drops a DDT on Boise State, and I'm going to go with the Snake.
Hey, I love that, my guy. I'm looking at all the updated lines from the stuff that we've been out on the show today, and it's actually insane how much the lines have moved in some of them, Eric. Yeah. Should we run? You mean every week? For us?
Every week we move lines. That's what we're here to do. So
let's
give me some of the play the hits. Quick. Give me some of the highlights, Vaughn.
Here we go, baby. Nakia Watson now -130 odds to the over. That's about to move. Trevor Etienne up to 52.5.
It's going up.
Cameron Ward down to 241 and 256.5. AJ Padgett now juiced to -130 and -140 to the under everywhere.
Yep.
Trey Lowe juiced to -140 odds. And then we got Fresno State and Washington State. My best bet got 52.5 up to 53.5. Oh my goodness, that makes me happy on the inside. And of course, If you're with the Zach Attack, SMU, that line is up to 65 right now too for the over in that game. Maybe they know. Maybe people are playing. Maybe people are playing. All right, Eric. Anything we want to throw out there to the people, whether it's for today or moving forward for next week?
Well, we're going to try to squeeze in, as we've discussed, a Wednesday show in a couple of weeks after Christmas because there's such a good slate from Tuesday through Friday leading up to the big Saturday, New Year's Eve. I think we've got enough there to be able to have a Wednesday morning, handle a excellent Wednesday and Thursday slate, and be able to have enough props where we can go and really give a good full rundown. So we're going to try to see if the NBC Sports Brass will let us run one back for you here on a Wednesday in a couple of weeks. But so I will hold any of that stuff I have here for that. I will give out one little look ahead, and that'll be on Prize Picks. I like JJ McCarthy, QB Michigan. He is at 16.5 fantasy points looking ahead to the 31st of December. I think they're going to need it's the playoff, right? TCU's there. Obviously, Michigan's the favorite, but I don't think they can just sit there and rest on their laurels with Blake Corum out. I think you're going to have to see JJ McCarthy really he's done well. Obviously, he's had a good season. He's led Michigan to an undefeated year. Everything's gone well on that front, but I think they need him to really be the 5-star quarterback. I think they unleash him a little more than we've seen, and I'm going to take his over 16.5 fantasy points on Prize Picks. I think you see that tick up before kickoff.
I love that. He looks so good recently, man.
Dude,
and if they're gonna let him sling the rock, give me his passing yards against TCU.
Absolutely, and he's
climbing up. McCarthy wants there.
Yeah, he's climbing up to 2024 QB ranks. You see some of the early 2024. How they project for the NFL draft, and he's in the QB 4-5 range. You're talking about a serious class too of QBs with Drake May, Caleb Williams, Quinn Ewers, a lot of talent. The fact that McCarthy's really cracking that top 5 says a lot about how he's played and how I think he will be asked and relied upon against TCU because, hey, it's the big time. There's no reason to save him now. You've gotten there, break him out, and let him loose. Let loose JJ McCarthy. It's time.
That's right, baby. Let the reins off. It's Christmas time, baby. We appreciate everyone that checked this out. Make sure you guys follow my guy Eric Froton at CFF Froton, myself at V Money Sports. Special shout out to Mike Bainbridge, who came through and threw down the hammer. If you can't take the heat with Froton at Bainbridge, get the hell out of the kitchen. Words of Eric Friedman, one of our loyal
boy, Eric Friedman. One of our, of course,
the squad ride is down to 195.5 on FanDuel, so go get it on DraftKings if you can. We're going 4-1.
That's what happens when squad rides come out. That's what happens.
Hopefully, we'll see you guys next week. We'll update you. Hopefully next week, if not New Year's Eve, but we'll have plenty of action on the NBCSportsEdge.com website and on our Twitter. So thank you guys for watching. Best of luck. Let's get this money.